What's up, guys? I'm Chris Spags, back with another Four Corners video for today's 6-game NBA slate, courtesy of Osmo.com. Now, it seemed like you guys liked the guessing game the most in the comments, so I'm going to do that again. In honor of Christian Wood yesterday, my guy, who I love more than anything, had 100% of in my lineups, and that ended up paying off pretty well. I want you guys to like this video right now. Leave a comment down below telling me which guy on the slate is going to have the best value play. So a guy like Christian Wood is going to have a monster day, maybe get you 9x, 10x value. Tell me who that guy is in the comments. The winner gets a special shout out in the Four Corners video on Monday. So like the video right now and give me your guess in the comments down below. First corner I wanted to hit on is a game with the Hornets visiting the Lakers. This one is a 228.5 point combined total, which represents a 4.3 point boost for Charlotte and a 1.6 point boost for the Lakers. Kemba Walker's had 3 straight games over 54.5 fantasy points, and 2 of those have been over 69.25 fantasy points. It is 23% ownership. I think I want to match that at least with Kemba Walker. Probably get a little bit above that because he's playing his team into the playoffs. They're now just 2 games out of that final playoff spot. It was really improbable when they started this run. They brought out the veterans, started putting in the young guys, and it seems like it's all paying off right now. Kemba's a hot hand. He's pulling his team where they need to go, so I like Kemba quite a bit and a really nice matchup versus the Lakers. Miles Bridges' usage is not the highest, much like his brother Mikal, but he has shown 40 fantasy point upside, unlike his brother Mikal, fairly recently. He's been also steady all around, pretty efficient with his shot, so I like Miles Bridges a decent amount today in a pace-up spot where he should also have some easy rebounding upside. Dwayne Bacon had 43 fantasy points in that overtime game versus San Antonio last time out. He's also had over 14 shots in his last 2 games. I think there's some risk that he loses some minutes back to Jeremy Lamb, who got hurt in that game versus San Antonio, but he still should see enough run. The opportunity seems like it's there, and again, it's a pace-up spot, so I don't mind going to Dwayne Bacon again today as a pretty affordable value guy. Willie Hernangomez may need to see some more minutes today because JaVale McGee on the other side can absolutely rip the Hornets apart if they try to go small on him, so I think there's a chance of Willie Hernangomez returning decent value. I'd play him over Marvin Williams. They're both projected for around 10% ownership right now. I think it's a good spot for Willie Hernangomez to end up earning some more minutes than it seems like he may get. LeBron James's price remains low due to the minute restriction announced a few weeks ago, where they announced he was going to be playing around 32 minutes. He's actually been around 34 to 37 in his last few games. I think the spot should be competitive again, so I'd like LeBron maybe earning the higher end of that window of minutes. His price is super reasonable because of the restriction and only 11% projected ownership right now. I think you could see him spike an upside day. JaVale McGee's had 4 straight games with at least 38.75 fantasy points, and that game, 38.75 fantasy points, came against a much tougher Utah team that he's going to be seeing today versus Charlotte. So I like McGee quite a bit. His price is up, but he definitely still has really big tournament winning upside at that price. So going to McGee today is totally fine by me, and it's something I'll definitely be doing a good amount. The last time Kyle Kuzma was on this video, I had his captions being Kyle Kuzma stinks. Today, I will be a little more generous. The points opportunity is there for him, but that's all he can do right now is score. He's offering nothing in any category. His price is reasonable, so if you want to go to him, that's fine. He can certainly spike an upside day and make me look bad, but I just don't like what Kyle Kuzma is doing right now, and I just don't know that he has the capability to get there points-wise. I'd prefer to go to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He can disappear as well, but he does have a little more of a professional approach to everything. He also can get hot more so than Kyle Kuzma's shown recently, so KCP to me as a little bit more of a cheap guy, definitely an interesting play who has some upside. The next corner I want to hit on is the game with the Blazers visiting the Hawks. This one has a 234.5 point total, which is a slate high, and it represents a 4.2 point boost for Portland and a 2.8 point boost for Atlanta. Kent Bazemore currently projects to be the highest owned guy in the slate at 26%. He's a decent value play with Taurean Prince expected out, so I get why people would go there. I think the upside's still questionable though, so I'd probably come under the field a little bit on Kent Bazemore. He's fine as value, but he can disappoint quite a bit as a chalk play, so it's up to you, but for me, I'm going a little bit under. Kevin Huerter also should see more opportunity because of no Taurean Prince out there. So I actually think I would slightly prefer Kevin Huerter at less ownership. It's not a ton less ownership, and he actually is a little bit more expensive than Bazemore, so it's kind of in the wash. But I think I'd rather have equal exposure to Bazemore and Huerter instead of loading up on Bazemore. John Collins is limited by both ineffectiveness and foul trouble last game versus the Pelicans. In this spot, he can get back on track versus Portland. The interior for Portland just much worse without use of Nurkic out there. So I don't mind John Collins today, but I think he does come with some risk. Also, the fact that he and Trae Young seem to pull away from each other in terms of usage, I think is a bit of a risk as well because Trae Young has been so steady and also just using the ball a ton recently. Speaking of, Trae Young's been over 57.75 fantasy points, along with 33% usage in his last 2 games, and most importantly to me because it gives him more of a ceiling, he's had 4 straight games of at least 11 assists. So Trae Young's doing it in every possible way. No Taurean Prince out there should help him out a little bit as well. So I think it's a nice spot for Trae Young. His price is reasonable and he has shown upside on it. So I don't mind going to Trae, and he shouldn't be that highly owned today. Damian Lillard's motivation's a bit questionable right now, as he didn't really look for a shot too much. He also started pretty cold last game versus the Bulls, but tried to get his other guys involved because he's going to need them to pull their weight at least a little bit going into the playoffs for them to have even a shot at winning a series. So I get what Dame Lillard's going for. I think this could be a spot where we see his usage push higher. It's a really hospitable spot versus the Hawks, obviously a pace up, a gigantic pace up at that. A spot too where defensively Trae Young's not going to offer much resistance. I think going back to Lillard today at just 17% expected ownership after he bombed out the last day is a wise move, but I get wanting to mute your exposure just a little bit in case he does bomb out again and guys like Seth Curry, let's say, get going in his stead. Enes Kanter had a solid debut in terms of per minute numbers versus Chicago, but he didn't get that fourth quarter run with the game out of hand. And I think in general there's risk he doesn't get fourth quarter run because defensively he offers so little. So you have to see him really have a hot hand in those first three quarters. I think it's possible he can do that here. Again, it's a really high pace spot versus the Hawks. Hawks a decent rebounding team despite that pace, but to me I just want to match Kanter's 19% ownership, maybe get a little bit above it because of the nice spot. It's a high Vegas total here, so if Kanter is going to have a good day, it's a good day to do it. And Zach Collins at 4,400 on DK is lurking behind him as a pivot, but he's a little bit expensive for where he is overall in terms of production, so Zach Collins is okay to me, but not a guy I'm trying to force into lineups. Mo Harkless and Al-Farouq Aminu did see more opportunity last game without McCollum and Nurkic out there. Harkless tried to shoot a lot there, but ended up really cold to start the game. I think just 1 for 8 to open it up, so he didn't get much going beyond that. Al-Farouq Aminu, though, did open some rebounding upside. He had 11 boards in that game. I think you're going to see him have some rebounding upside moving forward because Kanter can't grab them all, and he really wasn't as much of a rebound vacuum as it usually seems to be, though that might have been the matchup with Robin Lopez, which kind of gave him some more trouble than it seemed like he would have otherwise. So both these guys are okay to me. I think Aminu probably a little more reliable moving forward, but Mo Harkless can spike more of an upside because of the scoring that he offers. Seth Curry's usage rate was up to 25.5% last game. He's still coming off the bench. His price is coming up, but the spot here should offer him a decent opportunity. I think the issue, though, is he's been peak efficiency to get where he has, and he still hasn't really been reliably above 30 fantasy points. So some risk, some reward for Seth Curry. I think I would just match the field on him because I think he's worth it, but not worth going crazy over. The next corner I want to hit on is a game with the Warriors visiting the Wolves. This one is a 228.5 point combined total, which represents a 1.5 point boost for Golden State and a 2.7 point drop for Minnesota. Karl-Anthony Towns had 59.25 fantasy points versus Golden State the last time they played 10 days ago. And though he bombed out the last time that he played the Clippers as a pretty highly owned play in what seemed like a smash spot, the shooting just didn't get there for him. He shot 6 for 17. That'll happen sometimes. I think going back to Towns today is a pretty reasonable move here. The usage is going to be there. There's nobody else on the Wolves who can do anything right now. So Towns to me is a guy worth going for. The only risk is his price being up enough where cuts into his upside a decent bit if he doesn't have a big outlier day. Andrew Wiggins had 40.5 fantasy points in 41 minutes in that same matchup versus Golden State last time. Same thing for him. The usage is going to be there. I think the risk, though, is that he sees a little bit less minutes. The Wolves not playing for anything right now. There's no reason to put Wiggins out there for 40 minutes, so he can get there. He's an okay guy, but not a guy I'm dying for. Josh Okogie, maybe a steadier sort of value play than a guy like Tyus Jones or Dario Saric at this point. Josh Okogie's been over 26.5 fantasy points in 4 out of his last 5 games. He's offering a lot of things in different categories, not just scoring as opposed to Tyus Jones, and to a lesser extent, Dario Saric. So Josh Okogie to me is an okay mid-priced guy. So not a guy I'm dying for, but a guy who can help you afford some more expensive guys while also offering a decent floor. DeMarcus Cousins missed the last game versus Minnesota, and it seems like a good spot for him because he's basically a bigger version of Karl-Anthony Towns, not quite as nimble, but a little bit stronger, so it's a good foil for him. I think his price is right. He could have some upside in this matchup. Draymond Green doesn't look bad from a value perspective, and he had 38 fantasy points last time versus Minnesota, but that was without DeMarcus Cousins. Cousins takes just enough away for Draymond to make him a little bit less useful, so I don't know that he has enough of a ceiling, though. As a cash game play, I really don't hate Draymond. And as has been the case recently, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and Klay Thompson all look decent. I think Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are going to benefit a little bit more from the porous three-point shooting allowed by the Wolves. 37.8% allowed from deep. It's the highest on today's slate. So Curry, to me, the usage is the highest overall. Klay Thompson, a cheaper guy whose usage is a little bit more fungible, but if he gets hot, he can certainly have the big day. Kevin Durant, though, has been peak efficiency when he's had okay days. His 50 fantasy point day last time versus the Grizzlies, he got 12 for 13 shooting on that one. The usage is not there at a ton for Kevin Durant right now. The other guys seem to be getting more, so I'd prefer them, but really I think it's a personal preference thing. If you see something in one of these guys, just roll with them because you're going to be pretty low owned considering the fact that there are decent values. And the last corner I want to hit on is a game with the Nuggets visiting the Thunder. This one is a 219.5 point combined total, which represents a 3-point drop for Oklahoma City and a 2.8 point drop for Denver. Russell Westbrook is averaging 52 fantasy points in 3 games versus Denver without a lot of deviation on that number. It'd been around that number each time. So overall, to me, I'm not dying for Russell Westbrook today. The fact that the Nuggets really do handle lead ball handling guards pretty well, trapping them, making it tough on them, don't make me have a lot of hope for Russell Westbrook. I think he's more appealing if Paul George is out. So right now, I would say match the field's 25% ownership. And if Paul George is out, I'd be willing to go a little bit higher. Paul George right now is questionable. And if he's in, he looks good. He probably gains a little bit of appeal actually because of that questionable tag. The shoulder issues, though, are a problem. I think the fact that he's been off, at least if he is playing, should give him some time to heal that shoulder up. But right now, the shot hasn't been falling quite as well for him recently since he's had these shoulder problems. So I get wanting to avoid the risk of Paul George. But to me, if he's in, he becomes a more valuable play. Steven Adams had 52 fantasy points on 8 for 11 shooting versus Indiana the other day. And that's one of the first big games he's had in a while. And I think that's really the issue with Steven Adams. In his game logs as well versus Denver, you could see the same thing. He's had 53.5 fantasy point upside and a 26.75 fantasy point floor versus Denver. So it's up to you if you want to go to him. I think just matching the field on him makes sense. He always projects well and ends up disappointing. So I don't want to recommend Steven Adams ever. But I think if you want to get some exposure in line with the field's projected 17% and a little bit higher again if Paul George is out because there'll be some more shot opportunity to go around, I think that works for me. Jeremy Grant spiked some big days recently, but he does feel like a better play if Paul George is out. He's been getting a lot more usage recently. I think the last game, though, was a bit because of Dennis Schroeder's failures, which I'll talk about in a second. But Jeremy Grant, not a bad play, but definitely a much better play if Paul George is ruled out. And Dennis Schroeder shot just 0 for 7 in 21 minutes last game, and I think that's also why we saw some more usage going to Steven Adams and Jeremy Grant in that last game versus Indiana. So I think this is a bounce back spot for Schroeder. The usage never that high, but he has been shooting closer to 16 times a game before that. Certainly gains more appeal as well if Paul George is out with that usage left behind. So Dennis Schroeder, a guy to consider today. It's been a quiet few weeks for Nikola Jokic, but his last big day was actually against this Thunder team on February 26th, where he put up 66.75 fantasy points. In fact, his last 2 games versus the Thunder have been over 61.75 fantasy points. So the matchup with Steven Adams is bringing out the best in Jokic. I think it's a good spot to go back to him with his price coming down a good amount. Jamal Murray seems like the most bankable out of the guards, though their prices are all down a bit, so I get wanting some exposure to them. I think Murray, though, the most steady in terms of his usage. Will Barton projects for 16% ownership, and he's cheap enough where it makes sense, but I really do worry about the role for the other guys with Barton and Gary Harris in particular. Murray, too, just a little bit worried there, but I think I'm willing to go to him with some upside he's shown recently and the fact that he at least has usage in the high to mid-20s. Paul Millsap, to me, also the same thing as the guards. There's some questions with his role, but the upside's there for him if the matchup breaks his way. I don't mind Millsap, but certainly not a guy I'm going to be forcing into a ton of lineups. So there we go. Those are my thoughts on today's NBA slate, and I do have more in the link description down below. My column to switch and hedge at Osmo.com still going strong. There are 2 more games I couldn't talk about in this video, which I did discuss at length in there. So click that link and check it out. And please do continue liking the video and leave that comment down below. Tell me which guy you think is going to be the best value play overall. So the guy is going to have the best return per dollar on his salary. If you get it right, you get a special shout out in the video on Monday. So like the video right now, leave a comment, and if you're the big winner, you can join such luminaries as Rich SoCal Nuts, who won the Enes Kanter guessing contest the other day. And check that promo code Switch and Hedge. It'll get you half off your first month at Osmo.com. All the ownership projections and rankings. You could also do an all access pass. You're getting both MLB and NBA. I will be on MLB Live Before Lock tonight, the start of a ton of MLB content we're going to have moving forward. So check that out. Use the promo code Switch and Hedge. I'll be back again Monday with another 4 Corners video. So good luck and enjoy your weekend.